Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. All the remaining Patreon-sponsored reviews for this year do connect with old episodes, meaning they fit in with the every episode for the 10th anniversary is a follow-up to an old one thing. Mind you, some of them are a bit looser than others in that regard, but fortunately this one is not. 3 years ago, a patron asked me to review the first act of Homestuck, or rather, any act of it, because nothing would keep its fans from being angry at me than by reviewing something in the middle of it without any kind of context about who anybody was or what the hell was going on. Which, of course, I was only too happy to do because it was relatively short and it's got a massive fandom and, hey, maybe it's something I could get into. And 3 years later, I've read nothing more because I have no free time. What? I'm still half a season behind on Star Trek Discovery. Any free time I get is spent working to get History of Power Rangers back online for the 50th time. Act 1 told the story of Zoosmell Pooplord, aka John Egbert, who just turned 13 years old and is occupied with the normal things a 13-year-old is. Playing video games, being an amateur magician, the intense desire to poop on his own desk, you know, that kind of thing. He receives a beta copy of a video game called Spurb, that allows him to actually alter reality around him. Somehow this leads to an asteroid heading right for his house. With the help of his friend Rose, who loves a purple Lovecraftian monster named Fluthlu, he's able to construct some kind of blue apple that will somehow save him. And then the act ends with the asteroid hitting his house and causing a massive explosion. Ugh, such a cliche by this point. Maybe if the apple had been purple. So, what new adventures await Zoosmell now that he's been pulverized and annihilated? Well, let's dig into Act 2 of Homestuck and find out!
Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man, punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
We open Act 2 in a desert. Years in the future, but not many. It is a future that is not too distant, perhaps located in the 13th sub-basement. A wayward vagabond records a stuttering step in the sun-bleached dust. They cannot remember where they parked. And indeed, we see this vagabond in wrappings, possibly a mummy, arriving at something buried in the sand. Uncovering it, it's revealed to be a spirograph! Spiromania is running wild! Actually, it's an alchemical symbol that we saw in Act 1. Our next page brings us the GameFAQs entry on the Spurb beta, including one walkthrough whose introduction is not optimistic, discussing how the player has just participated in bringing about the end of the world. But don't beat yourself up about it. There was never anything you could have done to prevent it. The end is happening right now, as I type and as you read. I have come to understand that we were always doomed through our collective ignorance, and now further doomed by those few who know and struggle to flee. If you're so lucky, you'll be among the smaller subset of the latter who are successful. Okay, dude, I understand that, but I just want to know how to unlock the secret cow level. We soon see in a flash cartoon that John's house, and some of the surrounding ground, has been teleported into some kind of dark void above the clouds, a bunch of gray rings around their mountain structure. Ew, it's like leaving behind dirty rings in your bathtub, but it's the universe. In addition, the flashing jester sprite head that I didn't show in great detail last time because of the whole trying not to give my audience seizures thing has split apart and gone off in separate directions, leaving behind only the fresh scent of spirographs. What remains of the sprite transforms now into a ghostly jester that proclaims, "Boy!" Oh no, Zeusmel, you're being haunted by the tall man from Phantasm! Run for it! On the next page, you even get a full-on flash game where you're able to walk around and interact with objects. Well, I say game, but it's more just, hey, take a look at some funny remarks we have about your surroundings. Surprisingly, the house still has power despite the power cables outside very clearly being severed. See, now that's great customer service. Even in another dimension, we'll make sure your food in your fridge never gets spoiled, and you'll always have an internet connection. Speaking of, the chat messenger with Rose is still open, and they're able to communicate with each other. She's still able to observe him through the game, and has learned that other meteors have been colliding with people's homes, though the one that hit John's house was the largest so far, taking out the entire neighborhood in the process. So basically, it's going to be hard to get your mail for a while. Since the game is still connecting them and they can still affect things, they figure the game is their way out of this. And I suppose at this point, there's no reason to really question how the game did all this. I mean, the time to question that was when they added an extension on the house with it. Still, there are certainly important things to discuss. You never even wished me a happy birthday! Dude, you didn't even have a name until this morning. Are you sure that she knew when your birthday was? They start gathering supplies. First up, a towel, the most useful item in the universe, of course. John then proceeds to retrieve his PDA so he can use it to keep using the instant messenger while away from his desktop PC. On Facebook, there's even some people talking about the destroyed neighborhood, including a guy named Fedora Freak. How did this webcomic get into my Facebook page? As the voice of the audience compels John to jump out onto his car, we cut back to the future, where that spirograph in the desert is revealed to be a hatchway into an underground bunker. And inside of that bunker, the figure who had found it makes his way to a computer, where we reveal that they are the one giving instructions to John. Oh my god! The audience is a mummy! Following that is another GameFAQs page that describes all the weird alchemical items that John and Rose have been dealing with and their functions, although instructions are specifically given to, well, not do any of the things the two have done so far. Might be a good idea at this point to just delete the save and start over. Over to Rose and her observatory. She's observing the end of the world, it seems, judging by that meteor shower that's hitting a nearby forest and, well, setting it on fire. The ghostly jester, aka the prototype sprite, ends up getting merged with the ashes of John's grandmother from an urn. Hey, I have no idea either. I'm just telling you guys what I'm reading here. But let's ignore that for a second. To make things a lot easier, and avoid the blazing fire that's coming closer to her house, they decide to have Rose join him in the other dimension. Which seems like a really crappy plan, but whatever. As such, they need to get the physical copy of the game out of his car, which is unfortunately not accessible at the moment with the way everything has been set up in the house. Plus, you know, windows leading to the nowhere abyss outside, so they're not exactly a way out. Rose figures she can just bring the car to him, and then she loses her connection, and the car falls down into the dark abyss below. I don't think the insurance is gonna cover that. The power for Rose's laptop died, so she has to make her way to a backup generator to get it. As per the instructions of the audience, though, she takes a moment to consult her grimoire for summoning the zoologically dubious, aka for summoning an octo-squirrel. And we get to see a better picture of Fluthlu. Fluthlu, foul patrician of misery, affordable hourly rates. To hear his mammoth belly gurgle is to know the epoch of joy has come to an abrupt end. Well, yeah, when a creature like that has indigestion, I gotta imagine the time of joy is over. Or, of course, there's Nrub Yiglith, Shame Beast, King of Grotesquerie, Writhe Lord of the Moist Beyond, now on his farewell tour. Hearing his melodious chirps and tongue clicks causes one's bones to explode. Well, sure, it sounds good, but what's the catch? And finally, there's Oglogoth, the Deep One. Whenever he grinds his teeth, all the children of a random galaxy somewhere will frown continuously for a 9,000-year span. He is the first and smallest of the smaller gods, appointed in servitude of a vile, unfathomable pantheon of middling gods which cater to the whims of the noble circle of horror terrors, an omniscient, omnipotent order of the elite few, forever cloaked in the darkness of the furthest ring. Yet he still won't loan me $5. As Rose prepares to head back into her house, we're introduced to a new character. There's this really cool dude, okay? He's standing around being all chill, like cool dudes are known to do sometimes. A cool dude like this probably has a real cool name. Of course, Mr. Snifflebottom. Actually, the audience went with insufferable prick, which leads to him cutting the text box with a katana. While you built alchemy machines, I studied the blade! He really goes by the name Dave Strider, which is only 2 letters away from Dave Ryder, hero of Space Mutiny.
Well, anyway, got that out of my system.
It is an unseasonably warm April day. Your bedroom window is open to let some air in, and your fan is cranked. Arguably, even more cranked would be your fly beats, which brings us to your variety of interests, consisting mostly of flies and beats. Dave here has a bunch of mixing equipment, turntables, small dead animals preserved in jars, and of course a makeshift dark room. Which, combined with the whole preserving dead animals thing, makes me wonder if he uses it to take pictures of women and then cut out the eyes in the pictures. When John lost the connection to Rose, he tried to get Dave here to use his copy of S-Burb to help her, but unfortunately, Dave is too busy being cool, standing around his hot room, slicing at text boxes. The audience suggestion is for him to bleat like a goat and piss on his turntable. You would never consider allowing any fluid even remotely resembling urine to touch your beloved turntables. Now, poop, on the other hand, that would risk breaking them, and a world without the gift of your godly science just doesn't sound like a place you want any part of. While you're at it, you might as well wipe out human civilization with a meteor or something ridiculous like that, which will probably never happen. Well, it would be very tragic if the end of human civilization came about because of a guy named Dave. You will, however, contemplate bleeding like a goat for ironically humorous purposes at a later date. Yes, ironically humorous. Inside of his closet, we discover a certificate of authenticity about his sunglasses, which, based on the autographed photo of Ben Stiller included, I guess are supposed to be the pair he wore in Starsky and Hutch, and which you are now wearing to be ironic, but also to be incredibly cool in a way somehow intangibly related to the ironic nature of the accessory. You find it sort of exasperating to explain these subtleties to people. I don't know why you need it to be ironic, dude. Those things do look incredibly cool. The box also included a signed photo of Ben Stiller, which now proudly hangs above your closet. Proudly and ironically. Isn't it ironic? Don't you think? This is also the guy who was a fan of Game Bro magazine last time.
Okay, bro, I decided to give Game Bro magazine another chance, so long as it continues to sponsor 3D jacked jalapeno pepper jack Doritos and not Supreme Cheddar. This is a very important issue, bro. I haven't been in a video since the Homestuck review, which shows what my priorities are, bro!
He also maintains his own ironic webcomic, Sweet Bro and Hella Jeff, in which a man decides to play video games all day before he starts falling down all these stairs. I warned you about stairs, bro! I told you, dog! I warned you about things that become memes, bro! I told you, dog! When I was drawing my old crappy webcomic, it was only marginally worse than this. I could see this working. And don't underestimate the reality of this problem. Some people have issues navigating stairs. Just look at Poyo. He's been having problems with them ever since we moved out of the old apartment.
It keeps happening.
Anyway, that was all a bit of a flashback to his perspective of parts of Act 1. But now back over to John in the present, there's a sound outside the door to the balcony. And a thick black fluid starts coming under said door.
What was that black goo?
Naturally, our brave hero decides to open the door and investigate. You know, John, if I ever saw black fluid oozing under my door while I was trapped in another dimension, my first instinct would not be to get closer to it. This is why I still call you Zoo Smell Poop Lord. And then just as quickly, back to Dave, who accidentally spills apple juice all over his copy of the game. He gets a towel to wipe that up, then hangs the games up on a line where he's also drawing photographs. And a crow swings into the room to nab the copies of the games, forcing Dave to throw his sword at the bird, naturally killing it. But with the game still in its clutches as it falls back out the window, no one can ever know about this. Oh geez. I killed that bird ironically! Back over to Rose as she goes through her house and her mother's eclectic tastes. Not just the wizard obsession that we saw last time, but Rose had given her a gift of a vacuum cleaner once, and her mother had it bronzed and put on display. In the kitchen, as a kid, Rose drew a picture and poem of her cat Jasper's, and her mother put an ostentatious $15,000 frame around it and had it welded to the refrigerator. Then again, Rose also points out that her mother is a severe alcoholic, so it's entirely possible that all of this is a result of being incredibly drunk. While Rose narrowly avoids her mother, it's back to Dave, who continues his coolness by putting a towel on his head. So anyway, back in the present, John is continuing to text Dave about the fact that he may be encountering a monster. At first, it seems like Dave is skeptical of that, but of course he was just kidding. Of course there are monsters in your house. You're in some weird evil monster dimension, come on. Skepticism is the crutch of cinematic troglodytes. Like, hey mom, dad, there's a dinosaur or a ghost or whatever in my room. Yeah, right, Junior, go back to bed. F you, Mom and Dad, how many times are we gonna watch this trope unfold? It wasn't goddamn funny the first time I saw it! Which is why the movie Major Payne had the best answer to that.
He's telling that he ain't happy.
We finally see the oily monster that John has been pursuing, and it kinda loses all menace when it's wearing a jester's hat. It attacks, identified now as a shale imp. John tries to fight it in some animated flash bits, finally managing to defeat the imp until it explodes into a few gushers, which are apparently the material he needs in the game, called grist, to build some more stuff. And he levels up, because, you know, video game. Now he's a plucky tot. You know, I'm beginning to suspect that this comic is kinda weird. Rose, meanwhile, has gotten to the generator and run an extension cord into the mausoleum that it was next to. The natural place to store a backup generator. Our next command? Defile tomb. Press F to defile tomb. Rose is reconnected, but John has a new mystery before him. In Act 1, the door to his room was torn off and left on the bed, but now it's been reattached and left slightly ajar, and slightly a bucket as a bucket of water falls down on John's head, a prank left by the prototype sprite, who I will remind you, now resembles the ghost of an old woman because it merged with his grandmother's ashes. With a jester's hat. 10 years of this job and you think you've seen it all, but here we are! The sprite provides a bunch of exposition. John's father was kidnapped by two more of the shale imps, inhabitants of the dimension they're in, called the Medium. The video game acted as a gateway into this realm. There's also a realm above the Medium called Skaya, which could house unlimited creative potential. Nowadays, it's just called DeviantArt. The forces of light and darkness have forever battled over Skaya in an eternal stalemate. However, John's arrival here has basically been the sign that the final battle between the two forces is nigh. Unfortunately, the forces of light are apparently destined to lose. Neither John, the figure from the future, nor the sprite know what the point of all this is then, but John should try to unravel this on his own journey. The spirographs that were formed when the sprite split before are actually gates that will lead him to Skaya, each getting progressively more difficult to reach as time goes on. John figures this means he can save the Earth from destruction, but the sprite says, nah, Earth is doomed. Wow! Evil's gonna win, Earth is gonna be destroyed. You're a bundle of depressing information, lady. What else have you got for us? There's no afterlife? Dogs never loved us, they just tolerated us? The sprite heads off, presumably to make cookies, as it says, leaving slime on the Con Air poster as it passed through the wall! Geez, of course she had to ruin one more thing before going. Anyway, Future Guy tells John to go after her to get some cookies, but John refuses for whatever reason, leaving Future Guy to just repeatedly call John stupid for that. John eventually walks away and flips Future Guy the bird. You know, Act 2 is twice as long as Act 1, and I think I can see why, considering how long it takes to deal with this cookie thing. In the future, Mummy Wrappings Guy suddenly notices a storage locker opening up, containing a few supplies like beans and mustard, as well as a book called Human Etiquette. Human Etiquette, a book for those who type YouTube comments. Back in the present, Dave ventures out to get his brother's copy of S-Burb, discovering also his brother's Mr. T puppet, which of course is kept in the apartment with a sense of profound, humorous irony. Hey, there is nothing ironic about a love for Mr. T, young man. You've got a lot to learn about what's cool and what's valuable, including, for instance, Mr. T trading cards. Mr. T is wearing a leather thong and handcuffed to a pantsless Chuck Norris puppet. Okay, I got nothing. It is now entering weird, ironic territory. Or at least your brother is into some bizarre stuff with those puppets. Of particular note is Cal, a puppet that Dave is even willing to fist bump because it's just so cool. I think it's gonna come into my room at night and steal my soul, but whatever floats your boat, man. Dave goes on his brother's computer and finds his totally ironic website about puppet butts that isn't at all creepy, and he certainly isn't growing increasingly uncomfortable about or anything. Anywho, Rose deploys a new device in the game, the Punch Designix, a very clever device that hits you whenever you design something, and informs John that the area outside the house is now infested with more imps. Rose kills one and gets some more grist, building up some stairs so John can escape into the gateway above. Though apparently stairs cost a lot of resources. Oh man, I could have warned you about stairs, Rose! I really do hope that the final enemy in Homestuck is just a flight of stairs. John manages to kill a few imps that have invaded his house while we cut back to the future, where Future Guy is studying the Human Etiquette book, and he proceeds to rip pages out of it so he can eat them. Rose continues to build onto the house, basically copying and pasting parts of it to continue to get it higher since it's cheaper than making stairs. John reaches the Punch Designix and it apparently converts parts of his inventory into punch cards. Okay. And eventually Rose kills enough imps with random objects to open a hole for John to go through to reach the stairs up to the top of the house. Meanwhile, Dave continues to go around his brother's ironic room of irony, eventually heading into the kitchen where there's a frog puppet in a blender, which he activates. And there seem to have been blood inside of, or fake blood capsules, as Dave speculates. Also, weapons and fireworks everywhere, and also a Billy puppet from the Saw movies with a webcam in its eye that records the blender incident. Dave, I think your brother might be a serial killer. Ironically, of course. After a series of events involving trying to fit all the weapons he finds into his inventory, and more creepy puppet stuff, Dave looks up to see the crawl space above the apartment that has a puzzle piece painted on it with the words, "Hello, Dave," written in the middle. You just know he's being ironic with these weird mind games. There's no way anyone could be serious about aping those shitty movies.
Hello, Dave. I want to play a game. It's called S-Burb.
And thus Dave opens the hatch, and a bunch of puppets fall and bury him in them. Ew, some of them are vibrating! There's another note on the attic hatch from his brother telling him to bring the Cal puppet. Bro, roof, now! Bring Cal! We're doing it, man! We're making this happen! We're gonna warn the whole world about stairs, bro! We'll tell them, bro! Back with John and Rose, they used the punch cards they created on the other alchemy objects they had created in Act 1, creating duplicates of items of stuff that had been in his inventory. By combining some of the punch cards together, he's even able to craft a composite weapon that's basically a kind of spring hammer. And when he uses it on an imp, it sends him flying. Rose is able to catch him on a bed before he crashes. He's exhausted by everything that's happened and wants to take a small rest. Neither he nor Rose noticing the giant imp that's slowly making its way up the house. To make matters worse, the forest fire finally reaches Rose in the mausoleum, disabling the generator. As John wakes up and is contacted by another friend, they've been appearing sporadically throughout the story and imply they know more than they let on, and they might have psychic powers. I mean, with this comic, someone having psychic abilities is like the least weird and unbelievable thing going on. John heads up to the highest point of the house and is confronted by not one, but two giant imps, identified now as crude ogres. But enough of that, back over to Dave, where he and his brother will be making this happen. He arrives on the roof, where his brother sneakily gets away with Cal, and during the flash video sequence, we see another girl briefly before we suddenly cut to the wayward vagabond, aka Future Guy. He's been eating basically what he can. A small potted plant, a rotting pumpkin, those book pages. Yeah, he's pretty hungry, but he can't open up the actual canned food. And this is why canned food started having those pop tab lids. You don't want to get stuck in a post-apocalyptic scenario and not be able to get your food because you forgot a can opener. The vagabond searches the area for a can opener, but can only find a rusted metal mailbox flag. You're not sure what they're called. It's an old rusted one of those red mailbox arm swing flappy doodads, either for letting you know there is mail in the box, or maybe for alerting the mailman to outgoing mail to be collected. Oh hey, we have resolution to that bit from the first act where I wondered about the fact that around here, a flag up just means outgoing mail. Still just called a flag though. The vagabond has a small bout of insanity as a result of the instructions of the audience, wherein he becomes the mayor of Cantown. He may not be able to open the cans, but they can be the loyal constituency in this, his democratically powered city of cans. He even finds some chalk to draw roads. I've seen worse governments. After managing to free a bunch of Tab Cola from another storage locker, he examines the computer that he was using to communicate with John, managing to switch the view a bit, showing a wizard statue in Rose's home, Dave stabbing some kind of bird creature with another katana. Ah, crap, it's a birdemic! Get a coat hanger, Dave! And Cal ripped apart nearby. I see nothing wrong with this. He somehow activates all 4 screens at once, showing some kind of 4-hour countdown on them. But this ends up disabling his ability to enter any more commands. Since he doesn't care about any of this, he proceeds to waste 4 hours playing with the cans until finally he decides maybe it might be a good idea to not be near the computer when it reaches 0. He leaves the inner door of the bunker, but then bars spring up at the hatch exit, preventing his escape. Bunker stuck. On the door is a display with other places he can visit, and the hatchway entrance rotates around him, the door remaining still, and brings him to another room. In this room is a control console for a device with coordinates on it. The device seems to snatch things from anywhere in the world and pop them in right there. After beaming in a few things, including Cantown, he uses the device to teleport the bars off of the hatch exit. And so Act 2 ends with a flash video showing a lot of stuff. Rose desperately trying to get the generator to work, but getting knocked away by some falling trees. Dave confronting his brother and Cal on the roof. John's dad escaping the imps and getting into a fight with them. And most especially, the countdown timer reaching 0, the entire bunker lifting off the ground and flying off towards the west. While this comic remains incredibly weird, I've got to admit, it's really engaging. While a few mysteries are solved, like what the hell is the game, what happened at the end of Act 1, etc., just as many bits remain unanswered. There's a lot of stuff going on with a slightly non-linear narrative due to conversations between characters shifting perspective around to only get context to some of the stuff they're talking about later. The characters aren't particularly deep, but we've learned a lot about them in a short amount of time. There are a few things that I think do hurt it. The humor, for one thing, is very hit or miss. While stuff like Sweet Bro and Hella Jeff is friggin' hilarious, then there's stuff involving the shifting inventory and bizarre instructions from the audience that I feel aren't as funny as they think it is. Although maybe that's more for the younger readers and I'm just a humorless old man. The problems with the text boxes at the bottom are now a slightly bigger issue because now they happen underneath some flash videos. And while the video can be replayed, some of the dialogue is meant to match with the visuals, and that can be a problem if you're trying to pay attention to both. However, the story remains pretty effective at keeping you interested. It's entirely possible patrons will ask me to do more Homestuck, although I should warn people, there will likely come a point where I will stop for a simple reason. Some of these acts are really, really long. Act 5 is actually divided up into 2 sub-acts, with the second part being about 1,500 pages long. Comparatively, Act 2 was about 500. And after how long JLA/Avengers ended up being, yeah, right now the Patreon-sponsored episode slots are closed, but when they eventually reopen, I'm gonna be setting some length limits for episode requests, sorry. Still, Act 2 of Homestuck was pretty good. Next time, we're done with Patreon-sponsored episodes for a bit, and we continue the 10th anniversary celebrations by going back to how the show really started, with text reviews. And those remaining text reviews being made into videos. This entire time that you were being ironic, but the truth is, you were warned about the stairs, bro. You were warned.